1970. I'm with my friend. This is Paul Monat. He played with Gene Krupa in the early 70s at the garage. Let's have a big hand for Paul Monat. Paul, somebody give me a short experience
Yeah.
at the garage, and I'll step aside.
It's funny. A lot of you may know me. I worked with the Yankee Rhythm Kings out of Boston from '74 to '81, and Dave Whitney always, when he found out that I had sat in on one song when I was 16 with Louis Armstrong, it was like he was bowing down because I was in Louis' presence, and my mother hated that whole idiom because she was a coloratura for opera. So Sinatra and all that was not acceptable. But what the conversion was that my father took lessons from Gene for a very short period and was obsessed with Gene. So, and I always tell people, I always hoped for my mother's pitch and my father's rhythm. I ended up with her voice. But the three times that I dealt with Gene, and again, I don't have the memory that Steve has, so I'm going to give you a bouts because I was 17 years old, and it was the Sticky Wicket pub of Western Mass, which was the Stockbridge Inn, went way back. Before Sticky Wicket started out with Foster Yaden, who, by the way, just passed away. That was the place for jazz in the 70s and 80s. 80s and 90s, I should say, probably. But in about 3 years before Gene died, I went over to the Stockbridge Inn where Bob Connors had found me a few years later when I was 21, so I must have been around 17. And Gene was playing with Wild Bill Davison, who became my mentor. And I learned the hard way, along with Jimmy Mazzy, don't play too many notes. For years, Wild Bill had these black pins that would say, "Where is the melody?" Because all these guys from Miles Davis on up was just changing this sphere of jazz. Traditional was no longer in vogue, and these guys were playing all these notes. And, and of course, I loved Herbert Clark way back in the 1800s with Sousa, so I was having fun with the Carnival of Venice and stuff. But Bill taught me, and that brings me to Gene, because Gene agreed. He didn't say much, but he was such a nice guy. He sat there, and Bill and Gene, and there's a Paul Racucci and Frank Laidlaw picture in there, and a little after that. But we all played together, and he had me sit in with the band, and that was when I first heard Gene, and I was just enthralled. I was upset at myself because I was going to play drums. When I was 13, I was going to be a drummer, and I decided on trumpet and cornet, and that was the one time I regretted not staying with the drums, listening to him, because there's a problem with watching a video because things are a little out of sync, and the accuracy of what he's doing is lost because of it, in my opinion. Just what I see. Live, there's an emotion there that you just can't describe. Davison explained it later after Gene died when I saw him in about '81. He said, "Gene loved me because I talked through the horn with minimum number of notes, but every note was intended and emotional, saying something." And that's the way Gene looked at it. And that brings us to the, I'll bring it up just so you don't have to, the Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich competition thing. Even Buddy Rich, with all of his arrogance and personality difficulties, admitted that Gene was the greatest because of two things. One of which Rich didn't have, and that was be able to play the drums and say something, which is why I love working with him, because he personifies what Gene did. And people some say, "Well, what are you playing exactly like him for?" Why not emulate somebody that great? And Steve happens to be the aficionado of that playing. There's a lot of guys who can play a little like Krupa, but Gene and Steve are the same. And that I thank God for his obsession with that, because when I work with him, it feels like the same thing is going on in his head, and he's trying to talk. Rich couldn't talk. Rich was a mechanic. He was a V16. Everything was perfect. I never said anything. I never heard him say a thing. But Gene, you never heard him not say anything. Now, the degree of creativity would be up and down a little bit, but not by much. He just loved what he did. He was obsessive that way. The second time I saw him, one of the greatest trumpet players I'd ever known died at 28 years of age, Bob Layback. Very few people knew him. Brilliant, brilliant trumpet player, and we used to have fun playing double high Cs. And I had the chops apparently for it. He didn't. He blew his mouth out. And make a long story short, he worked with the great Caruso, Enrico Caruso's nephew in New York, and we went to New York together. And as we're walking to Enrico Caruso's nephew's room, where he was a lip specialist, Gene Krupa was walking down the hallway, and he had actually had like baggy pants on from the 30s, chewing gum. Now, he remembered me in that I said, "I'm Stockbridge, oh, Ian. Oh, yeah, how you doing, guys?" And he was this personality that he just glowed with the love of what he did. And unlike Buddy Rich, who was the antithesis of it, Buddy had no place in humanity as far as I was concerned.
That's an interesting story.
Yes, I have an audio tape of him being extremely horrible on a bus. And one of our friends played lead trumpet with his band toward the end of his life. To talk about two totally divergent personalities, and to have them, it was unfortunate because Gene, there was 4, I guess, Battle of the Drummers with Rich, and Mel Torme did one too, but it was Rich, and even Johnny Carson, I think they did one too. But the last one was sad, because if you listen to the last Battle of the Drummers, Gene was, what was it, 1970?
Yeah.
71. It was sad because he wasn't playing that level anymore.
Yeah.
But he was a lot older than Buddy. So that, yeah, he was much older. Anyway, that was the second time I saw him. We talked a little bit in the hallway, but his personality was like, if you were in a bad mood, you weren't when you're done talking. And he didn't have to say that much. He was just happy. I didn't notice at the time, but I don't know why, because it was only a year later in Springfield where his second wife was born.
Patricia Bowman.
Yeah, Bowman. I was born in Springfield, so that's probably the only other contact I
I didn't
had.
talk to anybody either.
No, she wouldn't talk to anyone, unfortunately. She's still alive.
Yes, she
Second
is.
wife. The first wife in the Gene Krupa story. That was the one.
No, after was he got married in June of '33. She died in 1955. It's real hemorrhage. His house in 1050 private residence.
Okay, all right. So this was the other one that was born in Springfield, where I was
married
born.
in second marriage in 1959 and divorced in 1968.
Well, he did divorce. I didn't know that. Anyway, Gene, the third time, was at a place called Warehouse 1 in Springfield. And I came right up to him and he smiled. And I didn't realize it because maybe I didn't get close enough to him, but I was 6 foot tall, 130 pounds at the time. And he was so small. I mean, he was like, when you meet Tom Cruise or Mandy Patinkin, these guys are only like 5'3" or 5'2". And his age, he was showing it. I brought him a '78 album with a white label on it, That Drummer's Band. Is that it?
Columbia.
Yeah, a red label, and he signed it for me. And all he did was put his hand on my shoulder. Nice seeing you again. And you know, there was a lot of people in the line, rubbing elbows. It was wonderful. But the guy, I'll tell you right off the bat, his personality is what came out, and what he taught me was to play every note with flair, which is